Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Lots of fights to break down and cover here today. We'll start off with Alimkhanuly's hard-fought win over DenzelBentley. This was a much harder fight than people suspected. When they first came out to the ring, I tweeted to say that I felt that Janibek looked very casual, overly casual. He hadn't broken a sweat. On the other hand, Bentley to me looked very nervous, and I was concerned that he might freeze on the night. Now, when the fight started, to me, it became apparent that it looked like Bentley did actually freeze. In the first round, he was very passive. He wasn't doing anything. He had a high guard. He moved back towards the ropes and he put his weight on that back foot and he was just basically not reacting. And Alimkhanuly was taking a look and probing and brought the backhand into play a couple of times. He found it very easy to get the outside foot positioning when he's obviously a southpaw. He's up against an orthodox fighter. And Bentley wasn't reacting to any of that. Now, post-fight, Bentley did go on to say that early on in the fight, he wanted to feel what Alimkhanuly had, this monster, this power. I want to feel it. I want to feel it on my arms. I want to know, can I take this? What do I do about this? How do I approach this? Maybe that level of intimidation, you could call it, or inexperience, meant that he started too slowly, because he might have really cost him the fight, because I didn't have him getting on the scorecard until the fifth round, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the point is, in the second round, he became a little bit more active with his foot. At least he was trying to step on the foot of Alimkhanuly and then go from there. But what Janibek did essentially was, rather than go for the outside positioning to be predictable enough to have his foot stepped on, he actually slipped his foot on the inside of Bentley at one point and lined up the lead hand with Bentley's face and created a 1-2 opening there. So it was some chess playing going on for the first couple of rounds that Janibek was just clearly coming out on top because Bentley was far too passive. And one of the problems that Bentley had is when you're leaning your weight onto your back foot with your right hand cocked like that, you're basically telling your opponent what your pattern is. I'm waiting for you to jump in, I'm going to wait for you to enter the pocket, and then I'm going to throw a big shot. So it's almost as though he's cocked and ready to go, and you're giving him the pattern. When I was a little kid, my brother used to grab the baseball bat. He's my little brother. And he used to wait for me and say, come on, let's go. And he would have the baseball bat sort of over his shoulder. Now I know he's ready to swing. He's already cocked. I know where the shot's coming from. He's not going to jab me with the bat. He's not going to kick me. He's not going to throw a jab. He was going to come with a big swing. So I would use essentially feints. I'd pretend to run in, foot feints. He would swing the bat, he'd miss. And then by the time he resets with that bat, I'm jumping on him and I'm bullying my little brother, taking him out, right? And I know I'm joking. We're obviously messing around here joking, but it's the same sort of thing. You've got your hand cocked and he knows what's coming. He knows the pattern. Now, at times he was also throwing a wide left hook, was Bentley, and sweeping it almost when he wanted to pivot out. And as Richie Woodall went on to say on comms, he was relying on Alimkhanuly to get complacent in there. Now, I'd already commented that if he's going to have success, he's going to have to mix it up. He can't provide Alimkhanuly with this consistent pattern. And Buddy McGirt actually said in the fourth round, when he realized that Bentley had finally started to initiate a few things, not just waiting. He wasn't just waiting there cocked. He was saying, you know what, sometimes I'm going to come forward, sometimes I'm going to go back. And that is what can potentially lure a guy onto a shot. Buddy McGirt actually said to him, you need to keep backing him up with a double jab. Do not let this guy get on the front foot. So Buddy had noticed a bit of a change there. And over the next couple of rounds, I actually had Bentley outlanding Janibek. He started to land an uppercut into the body. And he showed some variation with that regard, and he also landed a really nice lead uppercut. And it's that sort of thing that can catch a guy out when you change your pattern as you're not expecting it. Now, Alimkhanuly, I had him win in the seventh round because he started to get a bit more active with that lead hand again. He became too backhand happy for me at points. He was almost neglecting the lead hand, and sometimes that can happen when you fall in love with your own power. He's on this five-run knockout streak, and something that's Buddy McGirt alluded to in the ring. You can start to feel as though you're invincible, right? And so he went away from the fundamentals that have made him a top-level amateur. Anthony Fowler, for instance, has said he's the best fighter he's ever been in the ring with. And Anthony Fowler was a highly decorated, high-level amateur who's been in with some really good guys in the pros as well. So we know that he's got a skill set, but he's almost bypassing that to become a bully in there. And when Bentley started to land to the body, he was caught a little bit square at times, Janibek. He wasn't using that lead hand, so he stopped dominating in that regard. And for me, it was quite obvious that the right hook over the guard of Bentley was there for Janibek. Every time he'd throw it, he would land it and it'd be a solid shot, and he wouldn't build off that. And Buddy McGirt was begging him, let your hooks go, and he still wasn't doing it. Now, don't get me wrong, I had Alimkhanuly going on to win the fight 8 rounds to 4. But for me, there's a bit of a problem there because he was far too happy to look for a shot where he's landing one or two big shots and then not building off it. For instance, in the 11th round, he landed 2 huge left crosses. This was a swing round that I actually had going to Bentley because he was out working Alimkhanuly. Because after he's landing those big left crosses, he's not doing anything with it. He's not building. Why aren't you throwing those hooks when you know they're there for you? He seemed to have some stamina issues. Is he able to pace himself over 12 rounds? You know, there were just some problems there. Does he not have the killer instinct? Why does Buddy McGirt need to beg him to throw those hooks and he's not doing it? What was going on here? Was he just not well prepared physically and so he couldn't go through the gears? Or is he just a bully type character? And when somebody was willing to stand in front of him and put it on him in return, he didn't want that smoke in that same way. And like I said, he won the fight for me 8 rounds to 4. And a couple of the rounds that I gave to Bentley were swing rounds. So even the judge that had it 118-110, although that felt far too wide, I can see how he got there. Right, so it's not that Janibek almost lost the fight. I don't see it in that way at all. In the last round, he started really well and actually buzzed Bentley on numerous occasions. But towards the end of the round, he got himself buzzed too, right? So it's not that he almost lost this fight. It's more the case of there was a lot of work there that I felt needed to be done that wasn't done. And it makes me wonder whether he is a little bit one-dimensional in terms of his thought process, not in terms of his skills, but in terms of his thought process. He also had success to the body, and he wasn't building off of that. He didn't throw that enough. Bentley did really well. He started perhaps a little bit too late. You know, maybe that's where the inexperience or intimidation factor cost him. His stock would have gone up. And I'm happy for Bentley, you know, because a lot of people completely wrote him off after the Cash fight, even though he's continued to do some really good work since then. People just sort of dismiss him because of that. Oh, he's never going to get anywhere. Sometimes you can just get caught early or face a guy who's all wrong for you, who's physically a little bit too strong and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that you're, you know, just some useless guy. And he showed his level today. So congratulations to Bentley for that. Now moving on to SunnyEdwards, but please let me know, everyone, what you think about Alimkhanuly. Hype job, or is this just, you know, to kick up the backside that he needs? Well, SunnyEdwards outboxed FelixAlvarado in what was a terrific display of boxing prowess. Now, my favourite thing about this performance was the adjustment of SunnyEdwards, which was straight out of the playbook of MuhammadAli, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of the way the fight begun, SunnyEdwards started to really get on his bike and show his ability to be fluid and dance around the ring. He was making Alvarado fall short. He was catching him with check hooks as he was changing direction and circling the ring. Alvarado was very frustrated, starting to throw his punches from far too far out, and he was falling short. And as the bullets were flying, Sunny looked like Neo from The Matrix. The bullets were flying and he was nice and calm and composed. He looked fantastic in there. However, Alvarado did make a bit of an adjustment, and that adjustment was that he started to not throw as many shots after the 3rd round. He started to try and come in a little bit closer with his feet before he would start to let go of his shots. And as a result of that, he started to have a little bit more success. So although Sunny was dictating, there were hooks that were landing underneath the elbows of SunnyEdwards. So you're starting to see this as a potential investment for Alvarado. Is he landing some body shots here in the hope that he can come on strong later on? But Sunny's still looking brilliant. However, when this, for me, started to change a little bit, was in the 6th round. That was a swing round, and I actually scored it for Alvarado because, like I said, he's now getting his feet closer to SunnyEdwards before letting his shots go, giving Sunny fewer counter opportunities. Although Sunny was still landing some eye-catching shots, especially that left hook, there was the body work that was just starting to land a little bit more consistently. And in the 7th round, Alvarado had success again, and he was landing some more solid shots. So he's getting closer now. He's able to really start to punch a little bit through the target. And so Sunny now is sort of backtracking a little bit more in straighter lines, I felt, almost allowing himself to get back up onto the ropes without that thing of rotating around the ring with that lateral movement. In the 8th round, he brought that back and he started to look good again. But then there was a bit of a rally from Alvarado. In the 9th round, it was a hard round for Sunny. The pressure, the body work, it seemed to be starting to take its toll. And if you're a SunnyEdwards fan, you'd have been getting a little bit worried here. But that's when the adjustment came in the following round, in the 10th round. SunnyEdwards lost this round, but he willingly went back up against the ropes. And I'm going to borrow a phrase from Hennessy here. They were shades of Ali. He went on the ropes and decided to engage in a rope-a-dope. Even the method of blocking, as you can see there from the couple of pictures I've bordered there in yellow on the right-hand side, the method of blocking Alvarado's punch was similar to that one that Ali did to block the method of Foreman's punch. On the left-hand side, you can see back up on the ropes, high guard from Ali, high guard with one arm from SunnyEdwards, just rolling, changing the angle, trying to take things off of the punches, but goading your opponent to work and countering him when the opportunity's available. And because as a pressure fighter, Alvarado wanted Sunny on the ropes, he's seeing this as potential success. I'm going to work now. I'm going to wear this guy down. But instead, what he doesn't realize that he's doing is that he's putting a lot of effort in without causing huge damage. He's still landing to the body, getting shots under those elbows, but Sunny's very good at taking a lot off of the shot. So when the 11th round came, and I tweeted in the 10th, to me, it looked like a rope-a-dope approach. So I'd spotted that this was a potential, but you don't really know until the following round. What if Alvarado comes running across the ring and his tempo's even higher? If he takes heart from it, you don't know until you see that next round. Well, in that next round, Sunny, who had clearly taken the round off in the 10th, he got on his bike again. And Alvarado was just that little bit slower, and he started to counter him and move around the ring again, and he looked brilliant once more after that big effort from Alvarado in the 10th. Now in the last round, again, you saw Edwards back up onto the ropes willingly, and I'm saying, if he can get off the ropes, Sunny, for goodness sake, it's the last round now. There's no reason to be there. But it didn't last long. He then came off the ropes. He was taking a lot on the gloves and arms, and he started to land some nice stuff again as he danced around the ring. The point is, SunnyEdwards is a beautiful boxer that glides around the ring, as I've been saying for a number of years here. He's a star in the making, certainly among hardcore fans. He may not translate or transcend the sport with crossover fans, because we know he's a small guy and smaller fighters don't get the credit they deserve, right? But for a hardcore fan, he's just a joy to watch, and he's been calling out Bam Rodriguez post-fight. He's been calling out everybody. He wants all that smoke. This is a guy that really does want to leave a legacy in the sport. So shout out to SunnyEdwards for another terrific performance, and shout out to Grant Smith as well, his trainer, who's a brilliant trainer and is very unheralded in this sport. Which brings me on to Grant Smith's son, Dalton Smith, who long-time subscribers will know I'm a big fan of. Now, Dalton Smith has a lot going for him, but tonight against KaiseeBenjamin, he showed that there's also a lot that needs to be worked on, in my humble opinion. This was a tough fight, a British title fight, whereby he seemed a step ahead. He was a little bit sharper than Benjamin, who had some good upper body movement. He was a very good fighter in his own right. But ultimately, there's a little bit there that needs to be done for Dalton Smith if he is to kick on and go on to achieve the things that a lot of us feel he has the foundation to be able to go on and achieve. You know, in some regards, stylistically, there's an element there that reminds me a bit of George Kambosos. He's got that low lead hand, he's got the backhand cocked, and he's waiting for you to do your work, essentially, waiting for you to throw so he can explode into life and let go of his own hands. Now, unlike George Kambosos, though, he doesn't get his head off the line as well. Now, this is an area where I felt that Kambosos has actually declined a little bit in that final fight against Devin Haney. In the past, when you would look at Kambosos, he would slip the initial phase of attack very well, that first shot, and then jump inside and throw combinations. Now, pound for pound, I think that Dalton Smith's got heavier hands than Kambosos. I also think that he's actually got better feet than George Kambosos. But his timing and his reactions, I don't think, are as good. And he doesn't get his head off the line. So when it comes to that first phase of attack, for me, he's hit far too often. Because he's got very good feet, though, and he pivots off of that lead foot very well. He changes the angle very well with his feet. His defense is very good when it comes to his feet, although not necessarily with his head movement. So what can happen is you might land a straight shot against him, and then when you go for your second shot, he gets out of the way, and that's all well and good. But when you're constantly waiting for your opponent to attack first, like he tends to do, you have to be able to make the guy miss that first phase of attack. Because if KaiseeBenjamin was as good as a Devin Haney, for instance, in changing the level and coming out of the pocket and taking away what's there for you to be able to counter, it's going to feel like you're fighting a ghost. He's going to hit you and he's going to get away. Now, KaiseeBenjamin did display some good upper body movement, and at times he was doing very well to evade the shots of Dalton Smith. But Smith is accurate and he does have very heavy hands, and he is very varied with his attacks. So he was able to land more consistently than Kaisee was able to exit. And that's what enabled him to go on to win the fight. But for me, he's got to work on that head movement for that first phase of attack. Additionally to that, I also want to see him feint a lot more and initiate openings. You know, force the situation whereby you're being more proactive rather than reactive, forcing the opponent to go to work so that you can then counter that instead of necessarily just waiting. And I felt as though he was a little bit too patient, overly patient, which has been a criticism of his by some quarters in the past, that he waits a little bit too much before going to work. But listen, I'm being harsh on him because I've built him up so much in the past, right? I think he's a terrific talent. There are areas that he needs to work on. He would admit himself he's not the perfect fighter, right? There's no such thing. So if you're talking about areas where he is going to improve, I think those are the areas there. Work a little bit more on evading that first phase of attack in order to come back with shots of your own with your head movement rather than just relying on your excellent feet. That's my opinion on Dalton Smith. Let me know what you think about that performance. Moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about FRAZER CLARKE. He comfortably dealt with Sokolowski. And listen, Sokolowski is a better fighter than people give him credit for. He's that sort of journeyman that's a potential banana skin. He gives guys problems. He's not a gatekeeper for world level. You know, you don't have to be at world level to beat him. He's lost 27 times, right? But he's almost like a gatekeeper if you want to step up to European level. So if you want to get past that domestic level and go to European level, he could mess a few people up. He could mess up prospects. Many people felt as though he beat Adelaide. Many people felt as though he gave Otto Wallin a real test. He lost the fight, but gave him a real test. There were undefeated heavyweights at the time who felt as though they could do something in the sport. Sean Turner, George Fox, Dickinson. He took their O's. He stopped Nick Webb. So he's a journeyman. But only a handful of those 27 losses, just 4 of them, were stoppages. And they were at the hands of some pretty serious guys. Jalalov, who was an elite level amateur and possibly the future king of the heavyweight division. He's potentially a world champion moving forward. You've got Dillian White, who went on to become a top 5 guy. He was stopped by Kosobutsky, who's a very dangerous looking heavyweight with 18 knockouts and 19 wins. So another potential monster on the horizon. The only guy who stopped him, who perhaps isn't considered a heavyweight, potentially a heavyweight that can really go on to achieve exceptional things, is Nathan Gorman. He stopped him. But listen, Nathan Gorman's got the Fabio Wardley fight coming up. If he beats Wardley, he's going to step up again to European level. So again, you're talking about that sort of gatekeeper level between domestic and European, and he can cause a few guys problems. Now, I had Frazer winning every single round. But when you're looking at a guy like Frazer, who was a decorated amateur, against a Sokolowski, you're not contemplating him slipping up. What you're trying to do is look at areas that you wonder if other fighters could exploit as he steps up through the levels, or areas where he's going to look particularly good against other fighters. And he looked really composed early on. He was taking these little shuffle steps backwards and using the jab very well to maintain distance and to disrupt what Sokolowski was doing. He was throwing some nice hooks around the guard, and his schooling was evident. And although it was against the journeyman, like I said, you could see that there were difference in levels here. But Sokolowski, being the wily old cat that he is, he started to quickly realise that there was a bit of a hole in FRAZER CLARKE's defence. When he was at inner mid-range, he was throwing his own short shots immediately after FRAZER CLARKE would work. And he was landing them consistently. So while Clark was dictating, he wasn't getting his head off the line after he was doing his own work. He was quite static with his head. And his guard, when he was throwing a punch, because he wasn't bringing it back to his head as quickly as he potentially could have, there were moments there where Sokolowski could land shots. One of them was a jab directly after the jab of FRAZER CLARKE, and the other one was a left hook after Clark throws the right hand. So when you're talking about potential areas to exploit, you've got to look at some of the top dogs in the division. Now, if he's up there against a heavyweight who's got really good short power, like Andy Ruiz, and he was getting caught with the sort of shots that Sokolowski was catching him with today, he would have had a serious problem. So, yes, very good performance, dictating, controlled, but one or two things that I'd like to see him work on defensively. Finally, let's talk about the comeback of Ricky the Hitman Hatton against Barrera. Now, when I first saw the footage of these two dudes, I started to worry about MarcoAntonioBarrera, because I'm looking at him and he's coming semi-podgy, as though he's pushing 50 and decided, I want to get back into shape. So I want to break the monotony of life at the local car dealership where I work by joining the local leisure centre gym. I'm going to start going twice a week with the hot young honey that is the new personal trainer there. I'll get her to give me a program and try and impress her, type of thing. And then you've got RickyHatton on the other side, who's covered himself in tattoos. He's got his six-pack back. He's one shaved head away and 3 pints of beers away from getting a banning order for hooliganism at the World Cup. And I'm just sitting there thinking, RickyHatton has got some demons to slay. He never got over the fact that he lost to Senchenko. I can imagine him flying out at Barrera here and getting carried away with the crowd and the atmosphere. Luckily, it didn't quite spill over, but there were a couple of moments where they both decided to let go of their hands a little bit. RickyHatton actually started it, and I think Barrera said, okay, you want to take liberties, I'll take a few too. And Mickey Van, the special guest referee, he was basically calming them down a little bit and saying, guys, relax, yeah, remember this is an exhibition type of thing. It was a fun sparring session, essentially, with a terrific atmosphere. For those of you that enjoyed the nostalgia of these sorts of things, you'd have loved to have seen Ricky bouncing around. The little combination he threw with a right uppercut to the body followed by a left hook to the body and then a left hook to the head. Barrera getting on his toes and throwing a jab and then a lead uppercut as he exited the pocket. That was really nice too. These little things I'm sure would have attracted you to the fight and would have entertained you that night. Let me know what you think about exhibition fights in general. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Please let me know your opinions on all the fights that we have spoken about today. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.